This is the last moment of Caroline Flack. A woman once bathed in studio lights, applause, and Sunday headlines now remembered through silence. A courtroom she never stood in, and a world still struggling to understand why. She was more than the face of Love Island, more than a tabloid darling. She danced her way into the nation's heart with a perfect score on Strictly Come Dancing, hosted primetime shows, and dated royalty. But behind every camera flash, there were shadows. And on the 15th of February, 2020, those shadows grew too heavy to bear. At the time of her death, Caroline Flack was awaiting trial for an alleged assault on her boyfriend, an incident that had already cost her career, her reputation, and perhaps her sense of self, though the man involved refused to press charges. The headlines didn't wait. Social media didn't pause. In the digital age, sometimes the loudest courtroom is the one without a judge. What happened in those final hours? Why did someone so vibrant, so full of life on screen? I feel there was no other way out. This is not just a biography. This is an unraveling, a rewind to the flashing lights and red carpets, into the quieter corners of a life lived under pressure. You'll hear of her triumphs, the perfect cha-cha, the meteoric rise to fame, but also the unraveling moments the world wasn't meant to see. The backstage tears, the unspoken struggles, and the one story the tabloids couldn't twist after the fact. Before her death, she wrote, "In a world where you can be anything, be kind." But the question that haunts us is, was the world ever kind to Caroline Flack? In this video, and we don't just remember a celebrity, we peel back the final curtain on a life where joy and pain walked hand in hand. Her legacy is more than scandal. It is a warning, a mirror, and perhaps a message. To understand Caroline Flack's final moment, we must first return to the world where she once reigned. The mid-negative 2010 seconds in British television were dominated by reality shows that promised love, fame, and instant transformation. The genre had shifted, no longer about contestants, but the spectacle of emotion, heartbreak, betrayal, perfect bodies in perfect lighting, and at the heart of it all stood Love Island. The summer phenomenon that turned ordinary people into overnight celebrities and Caroline Flack into a queen of primetime. She wasn't just a host. She was the brand. With her cheeky smile, sharp timing, and effortless charm, she became the safe voice, guiding viewers through a world built on drama. But beyond Love Island, she had already proven her versatility co-hosting The Extra Factor, winning Strictly Come Dancing with a historic perfect score, and captivating the public with her stage presence and self-deprecating wit. Caroline's rise wasn't an accident. She had worked her way up from children's television to mainstream fame. Her trajectory was that of a woman determined not just to be seen, but to be loved. Yet the higher you rise, the thinner the air becomes. While the public adored her, the tabloids were sharpening their knives. Her relationships, brief, intense, and often with men in the public eye, became daily headlines. She dated Prince Harry, had a controversial relationship with One Direction's Harry Styles, and was rarely out of the gossip columns. But rather than protect her, the media seemed to hunt her. Fame gave her a platform, and then turned it into a stage for ridicule. Still, she carried on. Behind the scenes, friends described Caroline as someone who loved fiercely, felt deeply, and never quite found solid ground beneath the surface of her success. She battled self-doubt, anxiety, and the cruel reality that for women in television, Aging meant vanishing. And yet, 2019 was supposed to be another victorious year. A Love Island was reaching new heights. With millions tuning in, Caroline was nominated for national awards and remained one of the most recognizable faces on British screens. But everything would change on a December morning. An incident at her London flat, a call to the police. A moment of personal chaos that, once leaked, ignited a media firestorm. It was no longer just Caroline the presenter. It became Caroline the suspect. The smiling host of Love Island was now portrayed as violent, unstable, dangerous. The networks paused. Sponsors stepped back. Social media turned savage. No context. No trial. Just noise. This wasn't just the beginning of her downfall. It was the moment the line between reality TV and real life blurred beyond repair. She once said, "Fame doesn't protect you. Sometimes it exposes the cracks you've tried to hide, and those cracks created by years of scrutiny, heartbreak, and online abuse were now threatening to consume her entirely." The stage was set, not for her next season, but for a tragedy that would make the nation question everything it thought it knew about fame, justice, and kindness. For years, Caroline Flack lived the dream that millions imagined, but few ever touched. She wasn't born into fame. She earned it. Every live broadcast, every interview, every glamorous red carpet appearance was built upon years of early mornings, harsh auditions, and quiet determination. She had that spark, that elusive quality producers chase but can't define. Whether on children's television or presenting Britain's biggest talent shows, Caroline made it look effortless. But behind the charm was discipline. Behind the spontaneity was stress. In 2014, she did the impossible. She won Strictly Come Dancing, a competition where celebrities are expected to sparkle both figuratively and literally. But Caroline didn't just sparkle. She shone week after week. She delivered performances that brought the audience to their feet. In the finale, she scored 4 perfect 10 seconds, a flawless 40, and made history. The nation wept with her as she collapsed in joyful disbelief. It should have been her fairy tale ending, but like many fairy tales, hers hid a darker truth. Caroline admitted in interviews that winning Strictly left her feeling lost. The adrenaline was gone. The lights dimmed, and when the camera stopped rolling, the silence was deafening. She fell into depression, one she didn't always understand, one that no award could fix. Still, she carried on. When Love Island was revived in 2015, Caroline became its face. The show exploded in popularity, and so did she. From tabloids to Twitter, she was everywhere laughing, teasing, flirting. It was a role she played perfectly. But it wasn't acting. It was effort. A few knew the cost. The pressure to stay relevant, the fear of aging out of television, the endless commentary about her weight, her looks, her love life. Every public romance became a headline. Every breakup, a punchline. Then came December 2019. It started with a phone call. The police were summoned to Caroline's flat in Islington after a report of domestic disturbance involving her boyfriend, tennis player Lewis Burton. What happened inside that apartment remains private, but the aftermath was anything but. She was arrested, charged. The story broke within hours. And suddenly, Caroline Flack, beloved TV presenter, was front-page scandal. Tabloids dissected every detail. Social media turned savage. Brands distanced themselves. Sponsors paused campaigns. Love Island announced she would not return for the upcoming winter edition. Overnight, she was no longer a household favorite. She was a headline. The legal system pressed forward. Caroline pleaded not guilty. Her lawyers stated that Louis Burton did not want to prosecute, that he denied being a victim. But it didn't matter. She was told not to contact him by law. She couldn't see him, speak to him, explain herself. And while he publicly defended her, the damage was done in private. Caroline broke down. She worried not just about the case, but about her career, her legacy, and her life. She wrote in her unpublished notes, "I am not a domestic abuser. I lost my job, my home, my ability to speak. The truth has been taken from me." Still, she tried to hold on. Her friends said she was planning a comeback. There were talks of a podcast, of writing, of acting again. But the silence from networks was loud. The tabloid cycle continued. Even on Valentine's Day, one day before she died, Louis posted a photo of them with the caption, "Happy Valentine's. I love you." But love wasn't enough to shield her from the storm. She felt trapped between a media machine that had turned on her, a legal system that ignored context, and a public too eager to judge before knowing the full story. On the 15th of February, 2020, Caroline Flack was found in her apartment, alone, gone. The news hit like a shockwave. Fans wept. Colleagues mourned. But the deeper pain came from the questions that followed. How did it come to this? Why was no one able to protect her? Why did she have to carry the weight of the world alone? In the end, it wasn't the incident in the flat that defined her legacy. It was everything that came after. The whispers, the judgment, the silence. Caroline's fall was not instant. It was a slow unraveling, and we all watched. What the public saw in the days following Caroline Flack's arrest was a tabloid spectacle. Headlines screamed, "Betrayal." Comment sections dripped with judgment. She had not yet stood trial. And yet, in the court of public opinion, she had already lost. But behind those headlines, something else was unraveling, something quieter, far more painful, and ultimately, irreversible. Caroline was not just fighting a legal battle. She was battling the complete erosion of her identity. For years, her name had been linked to joy, to glitter, to the intoxicating light of primetime entertainment. Suddenly, she was being cast in a new role: aggressor, liability, monster. She couldn't defend herself. Not publicly. Her lawyers warned her to stay silent. Her friends tried to support her. But even they admitted she was slipping into a darkness none of them could fully reach. She left her apartment less and less. Paparazzi circled. Strangers screamed at her in the street. Even as Burton posted supportive messages, the media machine kept spinning, searching for new angles to sell. In one of her unpublished journal entries, released later by her family, she wrote, "I feel like I am on the outside of the world looking in. I always felt like that. I only ever wanted to make people happy. Now I can't even do that." Caroline had been open in the past about her mental health. She struggled with anxiety, self-doubt, and what she described as a constant need to be liked. Friends said she was deeply sensitive, too sensitive for the spotlight she had spent her life chasing. She was diagnosed with bipolar disorder not long before her death, a diagnosis that came too late to give her tools she may have needed. And as the day of her trial approached, the pressure became unbearable. There was no safety net, despite public pleas from her management to drop the case. The Crown Prosecution Service pressed forward. They maintained that they were following procedure. But to many, it felt personal. It felt cruel. Her mother later said, she was told over and over that this was going to end her. And in a way, it did. On the 14th of February, Valentine's Day, Louis Burton posted a message of love to Caroline on Instagram. It was a public gesture of support, but one that may have come too late. She was not allowed to respond. The court order forbade any contact. And so, on the 15th of February, Caroline Flack died alone in her apartment in Stoke Newington. The news sent shockwaves through Britain. TV personalities, who had once remained silent, rushed to express their sorrow. Love Island aired a tribute episode. Hashtags calling for kindness trended on Twitter. But for many, it felt like too little, too late. In the days that followed, of attention shifted from Caroline's alleged actions to the actions of others. Why was she hounded by the press? Why did social media offer no compassion? Why did the legal system ignore the context and move forward despite the victim's wishes? A petition called Caroline's Law was launched to prevent media outlets from publishing harmful and misleading stories. Within days, it reached over 500,000 signatures. Politicians called for reform. Campaigners demanded accountability from tabloids, from reality TV producers, from society itself. For Caroline's family and closest friends, the anger was complicated. They didn't want revenge. They wanted understanding. They wanted the world to see that behind the scandal was a woman who laughed too loudly, loved too much, and carried more than she ever let on. Her close friend and fellow presenter, Laura Whitmore, gave a tearful tribute on live radio, saying, "You don't have to tear someone down to feel better about yourself. And just be kind." That simple phrase, "be kind," became Caroline's final message. It was found in a social media post, drafted, but never sent, just days before her death. In the years since, her legacy has taken shape not through the lens of scandal, but through remembrance and change. The Flackstock Music Festival was launched in her honor. Charities supporting mental health and kindness campaigns saw record donations. Her face was painted on a mural in Wigan, alongside the words she once quoted, "In a world where you can be anything, be kind." Perhaps the darkest truth of all was not the scandal itself, but how quickly we allowed that scandal to erase everything else she was. Her joy, her work, her heart. And when the noise faded, what remained was the echo of a question we may never fully answer. If we had been kinder, would she still be here? Caroline Flack's story is not just one of tragedy. It's a case study in how modern fame can become a trap disguised as a dream. From this channel's point of view, what happened to Caroline wasn't the result of one mistake, one scandal, or even one system. It was the culmination of many forces: a relentless media, a hyper-judgmental public, a legal process blind to nuance, and a personal struggle that few truly understood. Some might argue that justice must follow its course, regardless of celebrity status. Others believe the legal system failed to take into account the mental health of a woman who had already lost her job, her voice, and her ability to respond publicly. The truth likely lives somewhere in the uncomfortable middle, a place the media rarely explores. The bigger question is this: what do we expect from the people we put on pedestals? When Caroline danced on Strictly, when she made millions laugh on Love Island, we adored her. But the moment a headline suggested she was flawed, that she may have fallen short, we didn't wait. We judged. We shared memes. We fed the algorithm. And in doing so, we fed the storm. We also must ask, should entertainers be expected to withstand more than the average person? If your worst moment became public, would you survive this scrutiny? The internet moves quickly. It rarely waits for context, for court dates, for truth. And in Caroline's case, it didn't, whether guilty or not. She was never given the chance to tell her side, not without filters, not without framing. That may be the greatest injustice of all. As a channel dedicated to exploring the final chapters of remarkable lives, we're not here to rewrite history or excuse behavior, but we are here to ask better questions, to pause, listen, and remember that behind every headline is a human being. Caroline Flack was many things: a presenter, a performer, a sister, a friend. She was complicated, imperfect, emotional, and she was real. Perhaps the legacy she leaves behind isn't just in the shows she hosted or the awards she won, but in the conversation she forced us to have. Now we ask you, our viewers, did we as a society fail Caroline Flack? Can the media ever be held accountable? And in a world that profits from outrage, is kindness still possible? Let us know your thoughts below. Because some stories need more than just a headline. They need to be felt, questioned, and remembered. There are stories that end with answers. And then there are stories like Caroline Flack's unfinished, echoing long after the final headline fades. Her life, in many ways, was a contradiction. She was the girl who made millions smile, while quietly battling her own sadness. The woman who stood under spotlights, yet often felt invisible when the cameras turned off. She craved connection, and yet fame isolated her more than it ever uplifted her. And now, in her absence, we remember not just the controversy, but the humanity. We remember the Caroline who danced like no one was watching, who cracked jokes at her own expense, who celebrated others' love stories while still searching for her own. We remember her friendships, her laughter, the nervous energy she carried into every studio, and the grace she brought, even when the world wasn't kind. For some, her death became a moment of reckoning. It forced media organizations, social networks, and even governments to look inward. But real change is slow. And sometimes, the ones who, to trigger it, never get to see it happen. A mural in Wigan now bears her face, painted with gentle eyes and a quiet smile. Beneath it, the words she once shared: in a world where you can be anything, to be kind. That's not just a quote. It's a reminder, a plea, a legacy. The tragedy of Caroline Flack is not only in how she died, but in how quickly we forgot that pain has no filter. That behind every perfect photo is a person, behind every scandal, a story, behind every silence, something that once begged to be heard. If this story stays with you, let it be for this reason. There are lives that pass quietly, but there are others that, even in their ending, whisper truths we can't ignore. And you now know Caroline's story, not just the version on television, but the one few dared to tell. There are stories that were never meant to be forgotten. Now, you carry one of them